done. Oh, look at that. We have what appears to be a golem coming at a high speed. Our gear is already up before that. Oh, watch the top side. Oh, goodness. They go through, and then, oh, we have a Gladiator. Oh, he's trying to shoot torpedoes or missiles at him. This Gladiator is now trying to destroy this whole sea for repairs. Oops, excuse me, adjust my camera there. And oh no, they make contact with the right side of the hangar as they come in. Actually, if I recall, they may have actually changed that. It's not a hard armistice zone anymore. I think it's a soft armistice zone. I'm not 100% certain. Welcome, pilots. My name is Hybrid V, and we are back once again to watch your takeoff and landings here in Star Citizen. If this is your first time ever watching this series, this is where I go around various starports and space stations in Star Citizen and watch players as they take off and land from those spaceports and space stations, and I give them a rating out of 10 based on how cinematic their takeoff or landings are. Now, what is a cinematic takeoff or landing? That is when a player does a type of landing or takeoff that looks like something you'd see in other types of sci-fi media, whether you're watching a film or a TV show or see any other type of media that portrays starships landing. So what that means is what I'm looking for is a controlled descent. So none of the keyboard catting and hesitation, good VTOL usage if the ship supports VTOLs, as well as using the landing gear and pulling it out at the last moment before they touch down instead of pulling it out way too far out. Now, none of this actually matters too much in Star Citizen as it stands right now. You can do all of those things I just mentioned, one or the other. You can have some of those things kind of be off, and it doesn't really actually matter. You can have your gear down all the way back in Cleveland as you come in, and it doesn't affect anything. However, that is not what we are looking for here on the show. We want to find those players that go a little bit above and beyond and have a little bit more pride in how technical their landings can be in terms of being able to be more cinematic and just looking cool in general. You'd be surprised how many players take a lot of pride in their ability to land, despite the fact that maybe nobody's even watching. So we'll see how many of those players actually pull it off in today's episode. Now, we talked about landings, and that's usually the most important factor because landings are the most complicated and the most difficult to pull off, especially in a more cinematic sense. Takeoffs are a lot easier, just like how taking off a plane in real life is a lot easier than it is to land. Also, check out this Talon here that apparently is destroying, kind of just a random thing. Anyway, a takeoff or a cinematic takeoff that we are looking for here on the show is a takeoff that has a lot of control. There's no hesitation. Gear up ideally before they leave the hangar and at the air shield for the hangar. So you want to have that gear up as soon as they're off the pad. And then they take off in a nice, smooth manner. No hesitation, no hovering, no nonsense. It's all nice and clean looking. Here's our first customer of the day. We have an Aurora coming in for landing, more specifically an Aurora MR. And you can see the gear is already down as they approach. This could be a brand new player for all we know. And that is perfectly fine. Again, all of this is perfectly fine, especially for a newer player, but we're looking for players that are doing something a little bit more that maybe they have a little bit higher skill set and they're able to show that off. In this case, we had an early gear deployment and we had a little bit of hesitation, some of the keyboard catting in there as they came in and then they touched down. And it was a little bit off on the touchdown, so it kind of made it a little bit rough, but overall very solid. And if that's a new player, that's actually pretty fantastic. You saw how they came in a horizontal fashion as they went down. Most players generally go nose in on these vertical hangars, so that tells me this player is a little bit more comfortable with flying an Aurora. So that is, let's see, we have early gear activation, a little bit of keyboard catting, and I won't take points away for the roughness on that landing because the roughness really has to do with how you do the landing gears on it. In that case, they had the nose gear touch down first, which causes the back end to kind of splat down. You want to make sure you kind of do, at least when you're doing something like an Aurora with a tri-gear setup, you want to make sure that you have the rear gear set touch first, or you try to do it so that way all three gear sets touch at the same time evenly. If you come in a forward approach and you touch that gear, you're going to slam the rest of the fuselage down really hard. So early gear deployment, a little bit of keyboard catting, and I would say that's probably going to be a solid 7. It's really, really good, especially for a newer player. All right, I'm just going to take a look at my radar here, and it looks like all these are probably going to be abandoned ships in the area. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and cut the footage, and we're going to find our next customer. But before we get started, I do want to give a big shout out to Eyewear Tech, who make the Beam Eye Tracker, which is eye and head tracking within games like Star Citizen or any other sim using your webcam. So it's an easy, cheap solution for those of you that want to get in and get a little bit more immersed. They also have a sale for 20% off right now currently, so if you're interested, check out the links below, and down there will also be a link to my video review. All right, back to the show. All right, we have a constellation of some type here. I think that's a Taurus. taking off. Gear's already up, like to see that. We don't see the fans yet, though. There are some weird LODs with the fans, so it could be that the fans maybe actually are open or not. Currently in the Constellation series, I don't believe the fans actually even do anything at all. They're just for show. And it's one of those things for it being not a gold standard ship, so it kind of is a little bit weird. Also, enjoy the teleportation. We're going to be seeing a lot of this, I'm sure, today. Over the past few days, the servers have been kind of having these like miniature stalls every so often, and if you ever fly low to the ground, you probably have felt the pain of having a miniature stall. That usually ends up causing you to blow up. In fact, actually, that was in my last episode when it was still in the PTU for 4.2, and you guys saw that I exploded multiple times, and that has to do with server stalls all the time. So that apparently carried over from the PTU to live. Whatever happened, there's some issues with the performance for the servers. So yeah, a little unfortunate, but it is what it is. So excellent takeoff. I do like seeing the gear actually come up before they left the hangar. No VTOL usage though, unfortunately, but everything else was pretty clean. That's a solid 9 out of 10. That's what we're looking for here, right? All right, we have another customer that looks to be taking off here, and looks to be a Cutlass Blue. Oh, I thought it was a red initially with that coloration. That's actually a blue. You can tell it's a blue because of the blue and red lights on the side there. Gear still down, no VTOL being usage. There goes the gear, finally. Rotate up and away, so we have excellent control on their ascent profile there. However, we have a late gear retraction and no VTOL usage at all. So that's going to be a relatively solid like 7. You could say that's an 8, but I'm going to say that's a 7 just because we have 2 elements missing there. Everything else was really, really good. I could bump it up to an 8, but I'm going to give that more of a 7. There's still a lot more that could be improved there. Also, you can hear the rain slowly rolling in here. Let's see. Ooh, we got a small hangar opening up over here. What have we got? Let's take a look. Do we have somebody coming or going? Apparently we have somebody coming into land here. So let's go ahead and hang off to the side here and let's see who that actually is here. I have something I want to show you with the rain actually here a little bit once this customer is done. Oh, look at that. We have what appears to be a golem coming at a high speed. Ooh, they were luckily able to slow themselves down. The Golem has an incredible amount of forward speed, but as you can see there, like you can really overcook that speed a little bit. And that player almost crashed into the ground. And luckily, the server also did not stall. Otherwise, that would have been tragic. Gear early deployment there as well, and a little bit of the keyboard cat back and forth as they're trying to kind of adjust themselves. So they're kind of applying a lot of that forward and backwards throttle. A little bit rough on the landing as well too. As you can see, they had a little bit of that kink and wobble there. They also were not using their VTOLs. Remember, the Golem has VTOLs as well. So we have an early gear deployment. We have some keyboard catting hesitation going on there. A little bit rough on the landing and the lack of VTOL usage. So I'm going to say that's about a 6 out of 10. It's pretty decent, but could be a lot better for sure. All right, now, since it's raining, I might as well show you guys something here really cool. Obviously, you guys can skip ahead if you want to get to the next customer, but one thing I do want to show here, just a funny thing. I'm going to do a video very soon talking about Star Citizen's audio and all the changes that are coming in and what we can expect. But as you see, I'm in first person here and you can't actually hear the rain. That's one of the biggest complaints people have had with the new rain that came in. If I go into third person here, you obviously can hear the rain, but listen very closely to this rain. And then you hear when I go back inside, you can hear how there's just nothing, right? So listen to this sound of this rain here. You see how it's the same when I was in third person? This is because this is the very specific sound that plays when you have a helmet on. Let me take the helmet off here really quick. You hear how the sound changes. So when you have a helmet off, the sound changes. And if I get back in my ship here, there's a little bit of a weird change that also happens here as well. One of the big feedback, of course, a lot of players have given since this patch came out, like I said before, was the fact that you don't hear any rain in the cockpit, which I'm sure CIG's working on, they just haven't plugged it in. But here's a weird, funny thing that actually happens when I go into third person now. You'll hear the rain sounds like how it was before when I didn't have my helmet on. If I put my helmet on and I go into third person, it plays the rain on helmet sound effect. It's a very strange thing that happens at the game right now. I think it's just an oversight from the audio team, but it's really funny. So when you have your helmet on, it slightly rolls off the high end and then plays the little sound of rain droplets hitting the sound of your helmet, like the raindrops bouncing off the helmet. But because I'm now in third person with my helmet off, you hear the whole sound unaffected. Anyway, let me go into first person here. Obviously, we have no sounds in first person, which is a little bit immersion breaking despite the fact that it's supposed to be translucent metal. It should sound like this. But unfortunately, it doesn't, and it's probably just because CIG haven't plugged things in properly yet. They haven't finalized the sound design. There's a whole slew of factors as to the reason why it's not in the game yet, and they're probably still working on it. Because despite the fact that it's supposed to be translucent metal, not actual glass, you should still at least hear something. I mean, at least that's what your brain would tell you. So it is definitely immersion breaking. We have a Warden here doing a solid 10 out of 10 style bolter takeoff pattern. A bolter pattern is when you lift off the pad, gear up, point straight up, and then take off immediately as soon as the doors open. It's a very easy way to get a 10 out of 10 takeoff here on the show. And what do we have here? We have a Hornet coming in hot. Luckily, they were able to slow themselves down. You can see they did a little bit of a flare there. Very nice, using those bottom thrusters to help slow themselves down. Remember, those bottom thrusters are very strong. Gear out a little bit early, coming in nice and fast though, lining themselves up for the touchdown. Let's see how they do. They kind of crank it a little bit off to the side as they come down, and a little bit rough on the touchdown, but overall still very nice. So they came in a little bit quick, which was a little bit scary to look at. Luckily they controlled themselves and they flared off. I'll give them a point for flaring off the speed. Very, very cool. But then they, as they came in, they were a little bit rough and a little bit kind of all over the place with their landing there overall. So I'd say that's a solid 7 out of 10. Very good. Could be a little bit better. There's a couple things I'd like to see them work on. Could probably even bump it up to an 8 if I was feeling a little bit generous. Anyway, let's see who we get next. We have an Asgard on approach, cutting through the clouds. You can see that kind of contrailing kind of effect as it cuts through the cloud layer and through all the rain and whatnot. It's actually a pretty interesting effect, and it actually makes it easier to visually identify things from far away. I was able to see this guy very far away because of that trail that they were cutting through the clouds there. Looks like we have gears not quite out yet, but they're not using VTOLs either. There's the gear, a little bit late, but better late than never. A little bit quick on the touchdown, but at least the touchdown was relatively smooth despite all things considered there. And we also have another hangar opening up here. We've got 2 hangars getting ready for something out here. So that Asgard is lacking a VTOL and a little bit early on the gear deployment, and everything else was really nice and controlled. So I'd say that's a 7 out of 10. That's a solid 9 out of 10 from that Pisces. The gear could be up a little bit earlier before they leave the hangar. I think they did a pretty decent job, however. Now we have another hangar open up here, and we have a RAFT on approach. Now it's showing the gear is down on this RAFT. That's actually not something to take points away for, because the RAFT is a little bit buggy with its animations right now. Currently, for some reason, if a player streams in, the RAFT is streamed in with its gear down for some reason to everybody else. As you can see, the gear now rotates as the gear is now coming out. So the gear was up on that player's perspective as they come into land. So we have early gear deployment. Are they going to use their VTOLs? They're not going to use the VTOLs. How are you a RAFT owner that has one of the coolest ships in the game with the coolest sound and the coolest landing gears and the coolest VTOLs, and you're not going to bother to use it? Honestly, come on. As a fellow RAFT owner, I'm telling you, use your VTOLs. It looks so cool and it sounds good too as well. But, you know, you can't win them all. This player is, of course, doing some type of cargo mission potentially here, as they have quite a load of cargo on them as they're trying to angle themselves to land next to what appears to be the cargo elevator over there. So early gear deployment, a lack of VTOL usage, and then of course as they're landing here, there's a lot of hesitation. You can see they're still trying to line things up, probably because they're in third person, and that third person, you know, you're trying to move your camera around, so you end up floating up there. Just a lot of hesitation as a result. You can see even the hangar timed out on them and is now closing before they even touch down. So again, early VTOL, or early gear I should say, lack of VTOL usage, a lot of hesitation. So I'm going to say that's probably about a 6 out of 10 there. I could even drop it to a 5 just because I felt like that landing could be a lot more smoothed out, but it is what it is. I'll say it's a 6. All right, let's move on. What have we got here? We have an Idris on approach, and off in the distance over there as well too. You see the Idris on approach, and then down right there in the back we have a Polaris also on approach. A lot of times you don't see players actually landing their capital ships on landing sites like this. They're more content to just use the docking collars, but these players are opting to come in and land, giving us a nice show here. This is an Idris P, to be more specific. You can tell it's a P because it doesn't have any of the railgun or anything like that, or even the K upgrade laser out on the bow weapon systems there. Although they have that cool shark tooth livery. I forgot the name of this livery, but it's actually one of my favorites. I do quite enjoy this livery on the Idris. Gear is coming down a little bit earlier than I'd like. Yeah, I like the gear coming out before landing because the gear does look a little bit funny on the Idris. It is a huge ship and it has to account for its actual ramp to load, for example, vehicles and equipment onto it. So it has quite a chicken leg style landing gear on it. If you actually watch it from far away as it takes off or lands, you can see those gears just like, they look very funny. They look like they don't really quite match the shape of the ship. It's just very skinny in comparison to the rest of the design of the ship. But anyway, this player is still kind of lining themselves up here. It looks like they're trying to kind of get themselves kind of squared up, and they're coming down a little bit quick. Watch the rear end there. Watch it. Uh-oh. Ooh, just barely cleared the back end as they come in. They're coming in really hot. Luckily, those big giant gears are going to easily absorb the impact. But yeah, if you had a crew aboard there, they're probably not having a good time. That's definitely not very enjoyable. You can see the pilot there in their red armor on the bridge as they get out to do whatever they're doing as they came in here. So we have an early gear deployment. Idris does have VTOLs. However, the VTOLs are non-functional currently right now. They don't rotate like they're supposed to. You can also see this Polaris has an early gear deployment as well. So early gear, and I'm not going to take points away for the VTOL. There's a lot of hesitation as they were trying to line things up, and they came into the pad really hard. So I'm going to say that's about a 7 out of 10, because they at least were able to come in. They had some confidence, even if they were kind of overcooking it a little bit. VTOLs are not active on this Polaris. That's why I flew under it there. I'm looking for those 3 strips of blue light that indicate that the VTOLs are actually firing downwards. And as you saw there, there's no blue light, so that tells me the VTOLs were not active. I also didn't hear that distinctive whistle that lets me know that the VTOLs are also firing as well. Interesting that there's 3 extra large hangars here, and this Polaris was told to wait in a queue after the Idris player got stored. I don't know why I didn't give him the other 2 hangars and it put them in a queue. It's very strange how the ATC system works currently in 4.0 and beyond. It's just very strange how it works. It puts people in the queue despite the fact that there's other open hangars available that they could use. All right, now they're coming in for their final approach here. Let's see how well they do. Looking good so far. Looking nice and solid, and it's a nice slow controlled descent. I like seeing that. A little bit of lag here. Again, the servers are stalling, so I'm not going to take points or anything like that away from them. That is just the server being the server. And a very smooth touchdown there. Now they're kind of readjusting themselves, but overall very, very nice touchdown there. So very controlled. I like seeing that. Unfortunately, no VTOLs, and the gear was used a little bit too early there, so I'd say that's about a 7 out of 10. I could even say an 8 just because I really, really like how controlled their descent was there, but I'm still going to just give them a 7 because we're just missing those 2 crucial elements for a really cinematic landing there with that Polaris. All right, let's go ahead and move on. That last server actually crashed and booted everybody out of the server, and then when I went back in, I couldn't spawn a ship. So I reset my spawn back to Orison, which is my home planet. And instead of going to Lorville, I was like, you know what, let's go to Grim. We haven't been to Grim in quite a long time. Grim used to be pretty boring for me because the servers that used to have like 50 player max, nobody ever really went to Grim. Now, because you have tons and tons of players on a server, you're likely to run into a lot of players coming to Grim. So you know what, it was like, you might as well just go back to Grim and check it out. And that's what we're doing here today. Grim is pretty fun. It is a place where a lot of players who have crime stats like to hang out, as well as there's a lot of PvP action out here. There are, of course, anti-PvP countermeasures in place here. There's a hard armistice zone when you're close to the actual hangars and whatnot. That doesn't deter players from at least trying to kill each other in the process either way. We have a Carrack on approach, a damaged Carrack at that. I can tell because A, their hangar is open, and B, red lights are flashing on the inside of that hangar there. So this Carrack is coming in for repairs. Oops, excuse me, adjust my camera there. And oh no, they made contact with the right side of the hangar as they come in. Oh no, they miscalculated as they made their approach, and now they are just scraping along the side of the inside of the hangar. This pilot, not being aware of their alignment as they came in, misjudged and clipped on the side of the hangar, and now they are struggling to try to recenter themselves as they're nosing over now. Oh no. Folks, remember, whenever somebody makes contact with the hangar, that's a lot of points I take off for that. So we have early gear deployment, and then we had contact with the hangar, and that just completely screwed everything up. So that's going to be a 4 out of 10 from me. Definitely could be a lot better for sure. Just this M50 here. It's weird because you'll see a lot of bounty hunters because of the re-added bounties system and stuff like that. A lot of players with crime sets will come out here and try to hide, and then you'll see players try to get into each other's hangars, and maybe that's what that M50 is doing there. That or that M50 crash into the side of the hangar, not entirely certain. But you'll see people try to actually get into each other's hangars as a way of hunting those players down. It's a really funny thing to actually see. Anyway, that Carrack appears to be leaving now, so it looks like they probably got themselves repaired, and now they are going to head on out. I like seeing at least the gear being retracted before they leave the hangar. Very nice. Ooh, a little bit early on the takeoff there. They almost, oh, I think they just clipped. Nope. I think the server's just lagging. All right, I thought they had clipped the bottom. Nope, they are absolutely scraping on the bottom of the... Despite the lag, they are still scraping on the bottom of those rocks over there. That's unfortunate. So I do like seeing the gear retraction before they left the hangar there. Nice and controlled, but then they made a little bit of a clipping issue there with the ground. So I'm going to give them a 5 out of 10. Now we have this Mustang coming out here. And this Mustang is a little bit early on the gear deployment, but overall very nice and controlled. I can tell they're on mouse and keyboard, but even then, it's really, really nice. I like that control. Very, very good. The only thing I'm going to take away is the way they landed with that gear being a little bit early there. And then, of course, unfortunately, they were a little bit keyboard catty with those controls. So I'll say that's an 8 out of 10 for that Mustang. Very, very, very nice. All right, we have what appears to be a Starlancer TAC taking off from here. And nice takeoff, a little bit of hesitation. Now, that could be server lag, but from what I'm seeing here, that looks like it's just keyboard hesitation there. And then I see the gear is still down as they're leaving, so I have to take points away from that. Luckily, the TAC doesn't have VTOLs, and the server looks like it's lagging. Yep, there we go. They finally realigned themselves, and off they go. But we have to take points away for keeping the gear down the entire time. And then there's just some slight hesitation as they left. That just happens to be just kind of like keyboard catting. You can see they kind of hesitate a little bit as they are moving around there. So I'm going to say that's a solid 8 out of 10. Could be a lot better. Now we have a Vulture here. Gear is still down as they are about to leave the hangar. Let's look at the side panels, the panels next to the cockpit there, and they are still closed. You can see that green panel to the left of the cockpit. That is a VTOL panel, and it is entirely closed the entire time as they were leaving there. Obviously, it doesn't matter as much because you're immediately leaving into vacuum, but it's still cool to activate it when you're lifting off, and then to take off and then turn it off as you're leaving the hangar. So, left the gear on, no VTOL usage, but overall, they at least were a little bit more consistent with their takeoff. There's a little bit of hesitation, so I will give them about a 7 out of 10. They get worse than the TAC because they were just not using VTOLs. The TAC gets away with it because the TAC doesn't have VTOLs. Anyway, let's see who we get next. And we have what appears to be a Starlancer MAX on approach towards the large hangar on the left side here. And let's see where the gear is already down early. You can see those little foot pads sticking down on the bottom there. And you can see we have a little bit of stair stepping as they're approaching there, as they're trying to descend, because again, this is probably a keyboard user lining themselves up. Oh, coming down a little bit too fast, and it just bonks onto the pad there. So early gear activation, we have some stair stepping action there, and then a little bit too fast on the descent. So I'm going to say that's about a 7 out of 10. Definitely could probably even drop that down a little bit further, but I still think that's probably a solid 7. Definitely could be a lot better, but overall it was relatively controlled. I would love to see that stair stepping be addressed. One of the things you can do, folks, if you are a keyboard player and you want to improve and try to avoid that stair stepping, you use decoupled for that. Obviously, decoupled doesn't 100% solve that. If your glide path was already not good to begin with, then you're probably going to have to readjust your strafe, and that causes additional stair stepping. But the main issue with stair stepping happens to be with players using coupled, and as they're coming in, they kind of hit control as they're trying to descend over and over, and that causes that kind of wobble effect you see there. Anyway, let's see who we get next. We have a Prowler Utility, it looks like, about to take off here. Let's see if they can avoid that M50 that is sitting in front of the hangar there. Yeah, they're going to try to rotate to get around the M50. All right, gear is already up before they... Oh, watch the top side! Oh, goodness! They clip the top side and then clip the side of the door on their way, and then they strafe right into the side door as they take off. A very rough takeoff from that Prowler as it was trying to avoid the M50. They just caused more problems, though, because they were not aware of just how wide the Prowler can be. It can be a little bit deceptive from the point of view of the pilot there. So at least they pulled the gear up before they left the hangar, but unfortunately they had multiple points of contact there. So I'm going to have to give them a 4 out of 5. Remember, anytime somebody makes contact with anything, whether they crash or anything like that, it's always going to be a sub 5 rating there. In this case, this player did a lot of really good stuff there that I liked. Unfortunately, they just misjudged the size of their ship and ended up making contact with the hangar. So it's going to be a 4 out of 5. Let's move on. All right, we have a Hull C. It's not a common ship you usually see, especially at the landing sites, because most players are doing their business at the space station, so that's normally where you'll see a Hull C. But we see one out here for whatever reason. This player is pulling one out. No VTOL being activated there. There are VTOLs underneath the bridge in the front there. A little bit late on the retraction on the gear as well. But overall, very nice, solid takeoff, and this player is decoupled. Though the server could also be stalling at the same time, but it looks like the server's not. It's just a nice decoupled, lazy flyabout as they go through. And then, oh, we have a Gladiator. Oh, he's trying to shoot torpedoes or missiles at him. This Gladiator is now trying to destroy this Hull C. Just comes flying out, completely misses his missile launch, and then there goes the Hull C. Off he goes, and the Gladiator is making sad Gladiator noises. I imagine since he's looking in the same direction, he's going to pursue him. Yep, there he goes, off into Quantum. Is going to pursue that Hull C pilot. My guess is that Hull C pilot is possibly a player with a crime stat. There is occasionally you're going to come across players that are going to do PvP and just try to kill players just for the fun of it, but that's not as common as many people like to think it is. It's especially around GrimHex. It's more realistically you're going to see somebody bounty hunting. So ever since they reintroduced bounty hunting, that's a more common thing you'll see, especially around GrimHex. So my guess is that player probably had a crime stat in the Hull C. Why they were flying a Hull C is beyond me, but yeah, that is a a wild thing to see there. It made me forget about the rating of the Hull C, so we had late gear retraction and no VTOL usage there, but I did like how smooth they were on the way outside of the hangar. So I'll say that's a 7 out of 10. Could be better, but definitely really, really nice overall. We have what appears to be an Aurora MR taking off. Gear is already up, so I like seeing that. A little bit of hesitation on the way. I hear missiles flying. I'm hearing countermeasures around me, so nice takeoff from that Aurora as they leave. That's a solid 9 out of 10. Just a little bit of hesitation as they left, but now we have... Oh, the Hull C is back! I think that's the same Hull C. I hear noise being dropped, and I think I heard a missile flying earlier. Yes, and now it's being attacked. You can see those shields flashing, and you can see the sparks from some repeater hitting him. I think this pilot is trying to find the hangar in there. Yes, that is the Gladiator. So this Gladiator is probably chasing this pilot because they have a crime stat, and he is trying to eliminate this Hull C. That's going to be a tough nut to crack, especially since it doesn't look like that Gladiator has a gunner. A gunner would definitely improve their ability to do additional damage and start cutting through that shield. And I think, yeah, okay, we have a hangar opening here, and I do think that Hull C is trying to land. Unfortunately, the Hull C is confused as to where the hangars are. Folks, remember, when you see, if you're trying to find the hangars at GrimHex, look for those tubes that are sticking, that are jutting out the side. These tubes jutting out the side that are attached to the rocks, these are where the hangar's at. That's kind of like the design language to help you guide you into finding where the hangars are. Find the rocks, find the tubes that are kind of like attaching those cables, those giant cablings, and then use that as a way of trying to kind of try to find the hangar, because they all lead towards the hangar. They kind of, it's almost like the side of the hangar. Yeah, he's just chasing that. That Gladiator is just relentless. Now, the Hull C pilot does not know that if they fly close to GrimHex, there is actually a hard armistice zone around GrimHex. At least there's supposed to be a hard armistice zone. I think they may have actually, if I recall, they may have actually changed that. It's not a hard armistice zone anymore. I think it's a soft armistice zone. I'm not 100% certain. And the fact that the station is not shooting at the Gladiator also confirms to me that I think this Hull C pilot has a crime stat. So this player is determined to get this bounty. And it looks like the Hull C probably has found the hangar. Yes, it has found the hangars. By this time, the hangars probably have already timed out, though. It's headed towards the hangar door that we saw, or yes, and it's closed. So they're going to have to recall another hangar here. It looks like the shield is finally down on that Hull C. The Hull C still has a lot of HP. Even with its shields down, it has a ton of HP. So this Gladiator is gonna have his work cut out for him. There goes the next door opening there. The Gladiator, as it swings on past me, almost hitting me, is now just relentlessly just beating up on this Hull C. Now let's see what's gonna happen here. I've seen this happen before. He's trying to shoot missiles. Oh, excellent contact with the missiles on him. He's headed into the hangar. Now, if he goes inside the hangar, his ship is gonna get stored. So what a lot of players tend to do is they'll exit their ship, and then they'll try to get into the hangars and try to shoot the player as they're coming out of their ship. And let's see if that actually happens here. Yes, there you go. You can see the pilot barely. You can see just a glimpse of him there as he took off from the ship. So he left the Gladiator there, and he just EVA'd into the hangar. And at this point, the story is out of our hands, folks. We can't see it. Another hangar opening up here. It looks like a player is possibly coming into land. And then Hull C is still firing off noise for some reason. I think they're just still worried someone is going to shoot at them. Yeah, so that's that is crazy. We have a Pisces coming in for landing here. Let's see how this Pisces does. Let's zoom in a little bit. Looking a little bit high up. Careful there. Careful. Let's get into third person, get you guys a bit of... Oh, he's going a little too high up into the air. Oh, and he makes contact with the top of the hangar. I do like that the gear came out, though, as they went through the air shield. That's very nice. Unfortunately, they make contact with the top of the hangar. I can't give a rating on the Hull C because it's being attacked. I probably could give it a rating despite the fact that it was under attack, but I'm just going to ignore that. I'll give a rating to the Pisces. Unfortunately, it made contact, so that automatically starts them at a 5 or below, but they used their gear, which looked really, really good when they went through the air shield, so I will definitely give them some points for that. So I'm going to say that their max is going to be a 5 out of 10, so that's what they'll get, is a 5 out of 10. Very nice. I just wish they just didn't make contact with the top of the hangar overall. There was also a little bit of hesitation there, but I'm not going to give them or take points away from that. I think overall they did a solid job. What have we got here? We have a constellation of some description here, and it looks like we have what appears to be, I think that's a standard Andromeda on takeoff. Their gear is already up as they head out. No fan usage as well, though, unfortunately. So everything is good there. I like what I saw. I just wish they were using the fans, so I'll give them a solid 9 out of 10. As they leave. A little bit of server lag there, here and there. Like I said, folks, ever since 4.2 went from the PTU to live, it still has these little stalls and lag spikes that happen every now and then. It's a frustrating experience, and unfortunately, CIG haven't tamped down on that. I hope with the new patch coming out that CIG will be able to get a handle on a lot of the server performance issues that have occurred. Luckily, the server performance issues haven't been super bad. The most I've seen that's been pretty game-breaking and annoying is the inability to spawn your ship at a hangar, which forces you to have to go to a completely different place in the game. Like, you have to go to a different station or go back to your home to then be able to spawn a ship and get where you need to go. Otherwise, you're basically just stuck there. And that's a really, really bad game-breaking bug that CIG still, to this day, haven't fixed. There's still the issue of calling your ship from an ASOP terminal and then your ship just getting destroyed when you go to the hangar instead of it just being there. There's just these really, really annoying issues having to do with like the way they do streaming in and out, and it just breaks everything, and just, yeah, they still got to resolve that. Anyway, let's move on. And we have what appears to be a Sabre doing a nice mail slot takeoff there. Gear is already up, but yep, looks like there's a little bit of hesitation as they're going to figure out where they want to go next. This would be pretty much a solid 9 out of 10. It would be a 10 out of 10 if they just cleared the rest of the area, if they cleared the rocks and everything in this area and then went about their business after that. But obviously they're probably hitting F2, setting their destination, and then they're going to close out their Moby and go do what they want to do, which is go quantum to the destination they had just set. There they go. And off they go. But if they had cleared at least the rocks in the area, it would look a lot better. Oh, we have a lightning on approach here. And I can see the gear is coming down a little bit early. And let's see, we have a little bit of desync as it looks like almost like they collided with the side of the doors, but I think that's just desync. And then a little bit of a rock down on the gear there, so it's a little bit awkward looking there. I'd say that's about an 8 out of 10. I don't like the early gear usage, and then the way they touch down is not the greatest either. It could be cleaned up a little bit more. And then we have what appears to be a constellation. More specifically, we have a Constellation Taurus here because of the yellow striations that mark their livery there. That tells me that that's a Taurus. Lifting up. Are they going to gear up before they head out? Let's see. Does not look like they are going to. So we have a late gear retraction here. In fact, there we go. There's the gear retraction. I like that gear retraction. I just wish they did it before they left the hangar. A little bit of a lag there on this player as well as they leave. But overall solid. That's a 9. It would be actually technically an 8 because they still didn't use the VTOLs. But if they were using a ship that didn't have VTOLs, that would be a regular 9 out of 10. I hear a Gladius somewhere around here. Where the... Oh, there it is. Mail slot takeoff from a Gladius over here as it zooms on out. The Gladius always makes me laugh when it comes to the audio design. It's so loud for... Out of all the other ships, it's one of the more gold standard ships and also the most gold standard when it comes to sound. But it's like, it's just so loud when it flies around like normal. And I'm wondering if that's going to be the standard for every ship. Here is that Lightning taking off now. I like the gear was up before they left the hangar, though. I do like seeing that. And let's see if they're going to continue past the rocks. And yes, they are. So that's a solid 10 out of 10 takeoff right there. That Glad was also a solid 10 out of 10 mail slot takeoff as well, too, because their gear was already up as they took off. And then they did not hang around near the hangars. They just kind of left the area, which is what you like to see for a solid 10 out of 10. We have a Valkyrie coming in for landing. No VTOL being used, although I do like the gear coming out as they come through the air shield. Very nice. Nice and controlled. A little tiny bit of stair stepping as they touch down and not full 4-point contact there. So they kind of landed on those back legs on the landing gear. And so it kind of had a little bit of a wobble as it touched down. So lack of VTOL usage, although excellent gear usage there. And then their points of contact were not super great there. So I'll say that's a solid 8 out of 10 on that landing. I don't see any other players coming in around here, so I think we'll go ahead and wait for the next one. I hear somebody on approach. What is that big orange blob? Tells me that is a raft on approach. Once again, the landing gears are decent, so I'm not going to take points away for it just yet. Let's see how they do as they almost squash me coming in. Nice approach. Listen to that. Nice flyby sound. Let's see if they can get past that M50 blocking the way. Gear coming down a little bit early. I do like them using VTOLs, although I would like the VTOLs to be used when they get through the air shield personally. But overall, I like that this raft owner decided to use VTOLs and their gear. It does tell me that this raft owner is definitely an enjoyer of the raft. You know, a player enjoys their ship a lot when they tend to use something like VTOLs, and they also tend to pull their gear out before they land. They just love the experience, the sounds, and just seeing everything work. Although despite the fact that this player is very much a raft enjoyer, they struggled to kind of set them down a little bit there. So we have early gear activation, and the VTOLs were a little bit earlier than I'd like, and then that touchdown was not the greatest as well too. So I'm going to say that's a 7 out of 10, and I think I see, yep, that's a reclaimer out there in the distance. I just saw this bright light just shining at me from the distance, and lo and behold, we have a reclaimer out there. For some reason, you can see the reclaimer's lights. I don't know if you can see, folks, on the center of your screen there. You can see this kind of shining bright light, and that's a reclaimer. Despite the fact that the reclaimer may not have its lights on, there's, for some reason, just a permanent light that's always on it. I don't know if that's by design, but it's just an interesting thing that you can just see from so far away. I guess that reclaimer is probably out there hunting panels. Anyway, let's go ahead and see who we get next. All right, we have a Nomad taking off. Gear is still down as they leave. So we have a late gear retraction there, and then we have a Warden taking off, a Sentinel to be more specific there. At least they had their gear up as they took off, so that's a very solid takeoff from that Warden. Although they're kind of hesitating in holding position there. I would like to see them leave the area. So that's a 9 out of 10 from the Warden, and then that's an 8 out of 10 from that Nomad from me. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. I think this is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode than normal. I normally like to do these a little bit longer, but you know, we had some server issues here and there. Oh, look at the Guardian coming around. It's a ship you also don't see very often, mostly a bounty hunting ship against AI than it is against PvP players, but still a fun ship nonetheless. But yeah, some technical issues here and there, and I think that's just kind of taking the wind out of my sails a little bit, so I just want to take a break for today. Folks, if you did indeed enjoy this video, please leave a like, as it really does help out the channel. And of course, if you want to watch more videos like this and much more down the line, be sure to subscribe as well. And if you want to go above and beyond supporting the work that I do here, consider becoming a channel member like these fine folks right here on your screen, whose contributions help me out immensely when it comes to putting videos like this together for you all. But until next time, fly safe, because you never know who might be watching, and I'll see you all in the black.